Okay, so we are looking here at nesting time. So this poem, there is no clear understanding of what the poem is about with the titles. So this obviously contrasts a lot of the other titles of the poems we've looked at. Um, but what we do is we move from being, more of the observer from Lady Feeding the Cats to again being kind of pushed in to be part of this moment, like we have with wombats and water lily and fireflies. So it's very anecdotal. It's multi-sensory, so it's not just about the visual; it's all about the sound and the, more tactile sense of touch within the poem as well. You can see that there is a range of techniques used within the poem, and it's very clear that it links back to Australian nature. So we have things like the scribbly gum, the banksia tree, and again, they're elements that help to make it distinctively Australian as well. We always have to keep in the back of our mind that Douglas Stewart is an Australian poet, that there are definite Australian elements within these poems, and that helps to enhance their distinctiveness because it separates them from being relative to other areas of the world. So, back to this being anecdotal, the poem starts, as it says, with an interjection and a clear reaction. And what we see is this is actually based on an experience. And so we start to see that in this poem, Douglas Stewart moves from being an observer to showing how he is actually interacting with nature in this particular poem. So we'll start it off. Oh, never in this hard world was such an absurd, charming, utterly disarming little bird. The mossy green, the sunlit honey-eater, that darts from scribbly gum to banksia tree and lights upon the head of my small daughter. So he's saying it's so absurd, but it is charming and a little bit disarming in terms of how, strange it is. But there is a honey eater, so a tiny bird that's moving around, or darting around, which is repeated throughout the poem, from tree to tree, and then it sits upon the head of his daughter. So it goes and sits on his daughter's head. And this is where we see that instant. Now they're actually interacting because the bird is on her head. So it must decide for men and birds alike, as pick, 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 it goes with its sharp beak. If so must trust in is possible in nature, and back it darts to that safe banksia tree, then swoops on my own head, the brave wild creature. So he's saying, this is strange, this bird is, sitting on her head so close, and it's picking at her head, and this raises a question, and this is kind of the central question around the whole poem, is the persona here is very surprised but pleasantly surprised by what is going on, that it's starting to see this bird has almost forgotten the threat that the humans pose towards it, that it so naturally and so comfortably goes and sits on the head and is trying to take the hair to build its nest. And so there's this kind of crossover here with the nature. And he's trying to imagine life in the bird's position as to why it would feel so comfortable that it would sit on the head, because so often in these poems, and that's what we see throughout all of the previous poems, is there is this separation from this observer and this person who does not really participate with nature, being so captivated by what's in front of them. And in this moment, which has kind of taken it down a level, it's the bird is interacting. Again, we have obviously that anthropomorphism because it's just a continuing kind of concept. But we'll continue on. It thinks it must have hair to line its nest, and hair will have, and it will chance the rest. And up and down my neck, and then my daughter's, those prickly black feet run, that tugging beak, and loud like wind it whirs its green wing feathers. So it's going back and forward between his head and his daughter's head, trying to pull out hair so that it can make it as part of its nest. Okay, and we get that some really vivid imagery here of, the feet and the tugging beak and the loud wind. So if you've ever heard a honey eater, they have their wings move super fast and they make this very like whirring kind of fluttery sound. And that's, if it was in your ear, it's a very distinctive sound as well. So the fact that they've talked about the whirring and it's loud like wind, so we have this simile and that onomatopoeia really enhancing that aspect that the bird is, moving so closely that you can hear, and it's loud like wind. So then take your choice from me or those fair tresses, you darting bird too shy for our caresses. There's just this gap in nature and in man, where birds may perch on heads and pull out hair, and if you want to chance it, well, you can. So he's saying, can't you see that it's not necessarily safe, but, it's taking that choice. It's going from one to the other, darting back and forth. It's too shy to actually be patted and, caresses, which, is very gentle way of touching. So that's where we get this other element of multisensory. So we can see the bird, we can feel the bird, we can hear the bird, and it imagines, the way that they would interact is that they could touch it, but they can feel the prickly feet. So all these senses are coming together and depicting how this bird is moving around. And we have this question, it's, as it's suggested up here with the nature, again, it's brought back to is this, there's just this gap in nature and in man. So we can see there's this separation. So yes, this is natural. Yes, we can appreciate nature, but there's always this tension between what is safe, what is not safe. And if we link that to even wombat, where, the wombat all of a sudden freezes and its whiskers get all tense because it hears something and it's in danger. Yet this bird seems to be comfortable to sit and move back and forward on the heads of, Stewart himself and his daughter. That's really captivated him because it confuses him based on all the other things that he's all about. We have again a continuation of a lack of punctuation. We have enjambment, which really speeds it up. We have some internal rhymes, so things like charming, utterly disarming, really adding to the rhythm of the poem and really building that intensity. Okay? But what we can see is the bird's spirit and this whole idea for Douglas Stewart, it's bigger than the bird itself because it's a teeny tiny bird. It's darting around. It's quite delicate. But when we think about it, it would come and sit. So finally, gap. Why are these feelings and why is that going on? And so I think this poem's quite easy to understand. I don't think it's too difficult. I think it's quite clear. The imagery's there, the senses are there, and the way that it is distinctive is through moving from the observer to the participant in a way. But obviously, it's really thinking about the bird, and the bird is the focus, its experience is that focus, but Stewart's reaction does assist in that way.